Story 4: The Dreaded Warlock. Terror and despair. These were two things the Warlock knew very well. At will, he could conjure massive pillars of green and black flame to consume his enemies, summon armies of rotting skeletal minions from the depths of the earth, change his appearance, and even steal the life essence of any creature he placed his hands upon, adding it to his own. For centuries, he wandered on his dark path, becoming a sort of boogeyman to the inhabitants of Earia. He had no name, or at least none that anyone had ever heard him speak. To every region he visited, he was known as something or someone different. The fisherfolk who live along the eastern coast of the Ivory Sea knew him as the Tall Man, a huge, stick-thin creature 3 times the height of an average man. It had no face, no hands or feet, and did not wear clothing of any kind. Its skin was inky black and tougher than aged leather. During the night, everyone knew not to leave the safety of the communal house, for you could never know when the tall man might be stalking the shoreline, searching for another victim to drag away, never to be heard from again. Far to the west, among the great dunes of the Warlock Desert, he was known as Halak to the nomads that wandered the sandy wasteland. He had no visible physical form, instead manifesting as a sinister, cruelly biting gust of air. Any person unfortunate enough to be caught in the evil breeze would soon lose something very important to them: a treasured possession, a dear pet, or even one of their beloved. The only way to avoid this fate was to never feel the breeze upon bare skin. The nomads wore thick gray cloaks and gloves at all times when outside. In addition, they also wore knee-length boots made from a rubbery material found only in the Warlock Desert, as well as a veil made of black silk. The Warlock's reign of terror continued unchecked for untold generations, though many heroes challenged him. Argol the Mighty, Tharin Iceshield, Grenith the Wise, all were great champions of righteousness, but none were a match for the powerful Warlock. One by one they were defeated, their life's energy devoured, and their remains added to his skeletal forces. Entire armies were raised for the sole purpose of bringing the Warlock to justice, the most notable being the one raised by King Aran of the Veiled Isles in conjunction with Khan Jugath of the Quiet Mountains. Together, and at the head of a massive war party numbering in the tens of thousands, these two great leaders invaded the dark swamp where the evil Warlock had made his home. They were not seen for 3 days. The sentries that patrolled the outskirts of the swamp reported hearing screams and the clash of arms and armor for the first 2 days, and then silence. On the eve of the 3rd day, a lone warrior stumbled out of the darkness of the swamp. He was alone and covered in horrific injuries, barely managing to make his way to the encampment that lay a short distance away from the edge of the Warlock's lair. Before succumbing to his wounds, he managed to gasp out the story of what had transpired. They had come upon the Warlock fairly quickly, almost as if he had wanted to be found. He appeared as an old, wizened man, leaning heavily upon a wooden staff. The two leaders approached him, offering terms of surrender, as neither man wanted to resort to force against such a seemingly helpless opponent. This had been the start of their downfall. In a flash, the old man was gone, replaced instead by a horned monstrosity that towered over the two men. Both kings were struck down with one swipe of the monster's massive claw. Their men, upon seeing their beloved leaders defeated, leapt at the monster, shouting battle cries and curses at their vile enemy. After a full day and a half of fierce fighting, most of the force that had entered the swamp had been defeated. The monster, though wounded in 100 places, showed no sign of fatigue or weakness, continuing to smash and claw and roar with evil glee. 30,000 men had entered the swamp. Now, less than 10,000 remained. The survivors fled, finally understanding that they stood no chance of winning this battle. For another day and a half, they wandered the dark, smelly swamp, trying desperately to escape its borders. Unbeknownst to them, however, the Warlock had placed them under a spell of confusion, causing them to wander endlessly in circles around his lair. He slowly picked off the survivors, savoring their fear and pain. Sometimes he would take the appearance of a venomous snake, sometimes an enormous cloud of blood-sucking mosquitoes, and even a few times, he donned the faces and figures of the defeated leaders, taking great pleasure in witnessing the joy on the soldiers' faces as they welcomed back their beloved lords, quickly turning into horror as he struck them down. The sole survivor, a grizzled veteran named Koto, had been one of these unfortunate soldiers. He had been running and running for what seemed like an eternity, when finally, he noticed sunlight streaming through the dense growth. With a choked sob, Koto flung himself in the direction of the light, sprinting desperately. "Please." A slight sound disrupted his headlong rush. Looking around, he noticed a figure lying on the ground not far away from him. It was the Khan. Stopping only briefly to hoist his dear leader upon his back, Koto continued, now slowed by the heavy bulk of the Khan. 10 steps away. 7. 3. Sharp, blinding pain suddenly bloomed in his back. He fell forward with a shout, landing face first on the muddy ground. As he lay there gasping in agony, he slowly became aware of a sinister chuckle coming from above him. With much effort, Koto managed to push himself up to his knees and swivel towards the dreadful sound. The Khan was no longer there. In his place was the old man they had seen when they had first entered the swamp. In his left hand was a short, wickedly sharp dagger. The tip of the blade was coated in a dark, oily substance. "Well, looks like the game has finally come to an end, hasn't it?" His voice was quite unsettling. It sounded like 100 voices, all overlaid on top of each other. "Go now, stumble and crawl your way to safety. Tell your compatriots of the terror you experienced. Tell them how no weapons made of men could puncture my flesh. How no trickery or deception could hide you from my gaze. I would hurry, however. The poison on my blade works slowly, but it will be quite painful, I assure you. Each step will feel like you are being pierced with blades throughout your body, and each labored breath will burn like fire in your lungs. An hour will feel like days, a day like years. I wish you luck." The Warlock then vanished in a cloud of foul-smelling black smoke, his laughter echoing in Koto's ears. The remaining men, now leaderless and hopeless, struck their camp hurriedly, eager to be away from the foul swamp. They returned to their homes, carrying with them tales of the nameless Warlock, tales that further cemented his place in the nightmares of the people of Earia. It would not be for many years that another assault on this wicked being would be attempted, but that, unfortunately, is a tale for another time. The end.